It's a silent epidemic, going no contact.
Debbie, I think both you and I would say that we've met with enough brokenhearted parents to know that this is such a painful, heartbreaking issue of deep concern to many. And as I sit with parents, I hear things like this. How can a child that I have devoted my entire life to just discard me so easily? Are they hurting as much as I am? Did anything I do matter? This pain feels like an amputation. We hope today to add understanding to this really sensitive topic and some practical help. And I want you to know our hearts grieve with all who are dealing with this. It is such a painful experience.
Yes, every one of those outcries that you mentioned, we've heard so many times. It is so distressing because it's not normal to disconnect, especially a child. If you're experiencing this in your family, we hope to offer some encouragement, things you can do starting right now. And we highly recommend that you try to navigate this tenderly and carefully. Have you ever longed to be able to talk about values and morals or faith and spirituality without feeling judged? Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Mindful Moments, Insights to Empower the Soul. This podcast will empower you to embrace your true self.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Green, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm so excited to be here with you, Debbie, today and talk about a really important topic.
And I'm Dr. Debbie Gilmore, also a marriage and family therapist. And much of what we share with you are experiences and information that we've learned over the years of our work that's so valuable for anybody. Few topics are more painful than the topic of family estrangement. And even more specifically, when children cut off ties with parents. Our topic today is in direct response to a request that we got from one of our listeners. When this happens, we are so grateful because we want to address topics that matter to you, our listeners.
Yeah, this is such an important topic. I was actually spending this morning at a gym, talking to a personal trainer, and we were talking about this podcast I was doing today. And they said, wow, 3 of our children have cut ties off with us. And it just reminded me that what we're going to talk about today is so much on people's mind and hearts. And so, first of all, we want to just verify maybe what everyone's thinking, that without a doubt, there really has been an increase of children cutting off their parents. And there's actually some really interesting reasons for this that we want to talk about today. You know, Debbie, I think both you and I would say that we've met with enough brokenhearted parents to know that this is such a painful, heartbreaking issue of deep concern to many. And as I sit with parents, I hear things like this. How can a child that I have devoted my entire life to just discard me so easily? Are they hurting as much as I am? Did anything I do matter? This pain is like nothing I have ever experienced before. It feels like an amputation. I had no idea something like this could ever happen. I didn't think this was even possible. How do I go on living when such a devastating rupture exists? How do we navigate this with other family members who are also impacted by this rupture? They'll say to me, can you help me understand what I did wrong so that I can try to repair this? And often just what can we do? What can I do? And so we hope today to add understanding to this really sensitive topic and some practical help. And I want you to know our hearts grieve with all who are dealing with this. It is such a painful experience.
Yes, every one of those questions or outcries that you mentioned, we've heard so many times, and it is so distressing because it's not normal to disconnect, especially a child. And even when they're adults, we just don't want to lose that contact. But then when it happens from their side and we go into this tailspin of, wait, is it my fault? We want, most importantly, to point out that you are not alone. If your heart aches for this adult child or children who've severed ties with you, there's a study done by Cornell University. This is just so shocking. 1/3 of Americans are actively estranged from a family member, and specifically middle-aged children. So it's a silent epidemic that is emerging, and a new phenomenon in our country we call going no contact. Quiet quitting also might be another way of putting it. Even though this is a term that's used in job markets, the quiet quitting is the child suddenly goes silent, no response, there's nothing. There's millions of videos on social media have the hashtag no contact. And there's 2 billion more hashtags toxic family. Now, as a parent in this situation, it can be easy to feel alone. Of course, you feel alone. And then you start to think that you're the only one experiencing this painful disconnection. That's not true. And you are most certainly not alone. There can also be a lot of shame when this happens. Parents feel like they failed in some way, in the very thing that matters most in life. It's hard to talk about it. So we don't. It's embarrassing. And we don't know what others will think of us as parents if we say that our children have cut us off. However, it is so important to note that sharing with safe others reduces shame, normalizes the problem, and improves emotional capacity for the long haul. And I'm going to insert the hopeful process of reconciliation. We hope that knowing many families are dealing with this will help ease your heart if your heart is aching.
Yeah, so I think that what we're going to talk about next is really important to understand. And that is that there has been a shift in the culture in our country. There's always been estrangements in life, but there really has been a radical change about the way we think about families. There's a psychologist, his name's Dr. Joshua Coleman. He's become a little bit of a national expert on family estrangements. He wrote a book called Rules of Estrangement: Why Adult Children Cut Ties and How to Heal the Conflict. But in that, he addresses this kind of cultural shift that I think is really important to understand. So things like honoring your father and your mother, respecting your elders, families are forever. Those are kind of the things, in the past that were core values in our country. But now that has been replaced with a greater emphasis on personal happiness, personal growth, personal identity, political beliefs, and mental health. And in fact, adult children today, they're often encouraged to prioritize their well-being, boundaries, mental health, and autonomy over family. There's places where it's greenlighting estrangement and using terms like gaslighting, boundaries, narcissist, toxicity. We're all aware of these terms and labels that have become pretty common in our day. The sad part, though, is that we're actually lonelier today than we've ever been. And people are trying to find their tribes, another tribe, when their tribe used to be their families. And so we know as therapists that there are times when distancing oneself from family may be necessary. But ideally, this should be seen as the last resort. In some ways, we've lost the art of talking to each other and working things out in our families with grace and forgiveness and mercy.
Powerful words. And as we talk about this, we want to acknowledge that when a child launches and spreads their wings, there is a shift. There is less contact. There should be. But what we're talking about is estrangement, complete cutoff, or this animosity toward the parents. And that's a distinct difference between launching and cutting off. So in our clinical work with families, there is an important term, parental intent. However, the underlying intent of parents can be misconstrued or even misunderstood. So most parents have done their best to be good parents, but perfect parenting isn't possible. And research tells us 30% good parenting is good enough because we can't do it well. So the hope is that parents will be seen as loving, as supportive, and safe, even in the disciplinary moments. That's required. We can't be our child's best friend. But there are multiple influences that have caused adult-child estrangement. It's becoming increasingly common today due to cultural changes, this idea that we can't be dependent, that we must be independent, and it doesn't necessarily indicate poor parenting. So, question, what can you do to cope with the pain and confusion now while maintaining hope for the future? I really like to tell parents, please, please try to be patient. This is the middle of your story. It truly is. Things evolve. If you're experiencing this in your family, we hope to offer some encouragement, things you can do starting right now. And we highly recommend that you try to navigate this tenderly and carefully. So first, approach with humility, not authority. Now, what does that mean? Anytime we approach relationships with force or an aggressive stance, we push people away. This is true in any relationship, really. But shifting from a parental role, for example, I know what happened, I know how to fix this, just listen to me. That doesn't work. Instead, to be curious, gentle, and open, basically approaching them with a listening ear, the hardest part of communication, listening. No defending yourself or correcting the past record, saying, well, no, that's not how it happened, or arguing about the past. That is not helpful. It's better to remember that we all have our own subjective reality and we recall things differently. Our brains store things differently. Humility reduces the threat and opens the door to connection. Now, something else, Sherilyn, as we talk about this, I just want to make sure that we point out listening first, seeking that understanding. Once you've listened, if they're willing to share anything at all, which might be rare at first, validate their feelings when they come out with whatever they want to share. You want them to be able to come back and feel safe with the next thing. But even when you disagree, validation is not agreement. It's acknowledgement of their feelings and their subjective reality. The child, the adult child, let's say, wants to feel, oh, you really do hear me. Or it feels like my experience really does matter to you. So this can be a turning point, really, and a powerful new beginning. So trying to fix what they say, like, wait, that's not what happened, it keeps parents stuck. And it really does push the child away. It shuts down the person. So what truly repairs the connection is validating the adult child's feelings, avoiding criticism, avoiding defensiveness. Boy, is this hard stuff, Sherilyn. This is really hard to do this. But I recently noticed one of my clients was in this very same scenario. And they asked me, how do I respond? Here's a text that I composed. I haven't sent it yet, but what do you think? Well, it was a long, long narrative text, unsolicited advice and rebuttals. And I've seen this backfire over and over again. The intent is I'll just give them my best advice and then hope that they'll listen. It doesn't work. It backfires.
Yeah, again, this is so hard to do what we're talking about because you feel so hurt and you want to defend or explain or justify or all of those things, but it just, as you said, it backfires. And so when you approach with humility and you try to validate someone's experience, your adult child's experience, even if you don't agree with it, another thing that you can do is to take genuine responsibility for anything you can. And, we've all made mistakes. And so to be emotionally mature enough to say, wow, I will take responsibility for the things that I've done that may have caused you harm, even like a small acknowledgement, something like, I can see how that hurt you, carries so much weight in something like this. Responsibility will soften defenses more than any kind of explanation ever will. So as a parent in this situation, if you can identify even a small area where you can genuinely acknowledge hurt or misunderstanding, it's valuable. Responsibility, again, will soften defenses and reopens the attachment system. Estranged adult children, they often view parents through a lens of past pain. For us to demand equal treatment, fairness, or appreciation will only widen the difference. So don't demand
Reciprocity. And you know what? Let me say this. We so often hear people say, that's just not fair. And I could sound insensitive when I say life is not fair. There is no fairness. There's no ledger. The ledger system doesn't work. So if we demand reciprocity from them, look, I'm treating you fairly, so you need to do the same, doesn't work. It's an ultimatum and it just pushes them away. So here's one that parents always ask me, what do I do? Do I just wait until they reach out? No, no, go ahead and make the first move, but be gentle and without pressure. Most adult children that are estranged won't initiate contact. In fact, I'm going to suggest that they are hoping that you might reach out in some way, but they're maybe too ashamed or hurting too much to have the courage to do that. And so a short, warm, one way, notice, one way, no expectations, non-demanding text, something like, I just want you to know I care about you. I am here whenever you feel ready to talk, or I would love for you to help me better understand your experience. The three most powerful words in any negotiation, and I'm talking about with world leaders, is help me understand. And then don't ask for a meeting. We need to have a meeting. Boy, that doesn't work. That just suggests, is this going to be an intervention and force? Don't ask for forgiveness and don't suggest a fixed timeline. This sounds forceful and like an ultimatum. So you've got to give space also without withdrawing love. So that's why we suggest this one-way message. I love you. I'm here for you is not withdrawing love. Space is often required before reconnection can begin. After a really painful or tense confrontation, the space allows the dust to settle. But remember too that waiting too long can make the reconnection attempt even more difficult. The ice just continues to form and it's hard to pierce that ice. So the paradox of backing off while staying available is healthier than pursuing in panic or shutting down in rejection, stonewalling like we've talked about. So also regulate your emotions. Notice how you're feeling. Don't pursue, which is pressure, panic, or explaining yourself. Estrangement triggers profound grief. It really does in both parties. So fear is in everyone, both sides. Even though your adult children don't want to admit they feel that way, they likely do. But emotional intensity, like pleading or long texts or guilt or defensiveness or letters, let's add that, just pushes the children further away. Your calmness signals safety.
Yeah, I love all those suggestions. And just to kind of build on that, Debbie, that if they've, to respect all boundaries immediately and fully, if they've asked for something, to respect that, it is a sign of respect. And so if they request no contact or less contact or only texting or no mention of certain topics, we can honor those without protest or emotional loading, like you just talked about. Again, a calmness sends the message of safety. And I love this. Boundaries will restore the adult's child's sense of autonomy and safety. So, yeah, be respectful of things that they're asking. It helps that space that we're talking about, right? That's so valuable in the repair. And then another thing, this can be hard to do. Oh, so hard because your heart's broken. But to begin building a meaningful life outside of the estrangement. I've sat with clients who are consumed by this. They've actually can hardly live life. They're so consumed by the pain, and that's understandable. But if you can build a meaningful life outside of this, it's essential for your own well-being, and it will actually increase the likelihood of reconnection. Yeah, adult children can sense when their parents are their only source of purpose, and that can actually feel like pressure. And so, if you can cultivate your friendships, your hobbies, service, work, any kind of spiritual grounding, that will also decrease this emotional intensity and increase resilience.
Yes, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about over and over and over again. I see examples of my clients that have waited and not just sat still and waited in agony. They've gone on with their lives, consistently sending those messages. Maybe 6 months or even a year later, they will come in and they'll say, I heard from my daughter. She reached out. And what a joyful moment. It's a new beginning. So hold on to hope. Never, ever give up because your consistency will counter that belief that you don't care about them. They now don't have any evidence that you don't care. You have multiple texts of, I'm here for you, and not three in a day. This is in intervals that are healthy. Once a week, reach out, say, I'm thinking about you. That is okay. You also have to work to adjust your expectations. So reconnection is slow and it's an evolving process. The most successful parents learn to live in the paradox. So be consistent in your gentle reaches. Stay available, stay warm and emotionally safe. Avoid the pressure. And in the meantime, live a full, rich life. Whether reconnection happens now or later, remember this is the middle of the story and there are joys waiting around the corner. So, sending that consistent message of love and acceptance can transform the relationship and in a way that you can't see yet. It's transforming it behind the scenes, behind the curtain, even before the reconnection happens. So, reconciliation is a process of consistent, small, incremental repairs, not a single breakthrough. Change is incremental and it requires that slow, steady, low pressure contact. So, accepting the state of the present brings you peace, regardless of the outcome. While many estrangements do improve over time, unfortunately, some don't. And let's just acknowledge that, Sherilyn, that there are some who will not experience that reconnection. Parents can still move forward and must toward what we would call emotional freedom. Grieve the loss, acknowledge that it's happening because it's real, and release the fantasy of the ideal adult child relationship. Shift away from self blame to self compassion and meaning making, differentiation versus disconnection. We would do well, Sherilyn, to have a whole podcast on the term differentiation versus disconnection because it really is a very healthy state.
Yeah, I would love that. We should do that.
Yeah.
This is, I say this really sensitively too. Are there things as parents we can do that could be preventative in this? And again, I say that carefully because I think a lot of parents have been preventative and it still can happen. But, just thoughts about as we raise children to model reconciliation, transparency, safety, and good communication as our children grow up. There are things that we can be doing if our children are still at home to put in some preventative measures for some of this to happen. We want to end today by offering hope. I loved finding out recently that a large longitudinal US study found that many estrangements, like we've talked about, are temporary. In fact, the study showed that 81% of adult children will reconnect with their moms and 69% will reconnect with their fathers. And so we want to, in all of this pain, offer hope that it is the middle of the story, like you said, Debbie, and there are some things that we can do that will set the stage for possible reconciliation. There's power in that. The things that we've talked about, it gives us a sense of we can do something, besides just sit, and how to do that in a way that's most effective. The final thing we want to talk about is the power of prayer in this situation. We believe that turning things over to God is one of the most important things that we can do. His timing and his ways, his full omnipotent knowledge about what is best, we can trust in that. And so when it feels like there's nothing else to do, we can always pray for our hearts to be softened, our heart to be softened, our adult child's heart to be softened. We can expect miracles. And often that stepping out of the way allows God to do his work.
I love that. Thank you for saying that because I was just sitting here thinking, I can't be a parent without that faith in God and that I'm not in charge. I can partner with God in this and ask for that power from heaven, but it also gives us the ability to be patient and to be able to live even cheerfully in the midst of this disconnection. It's so painful. But the thing I want to add, and this is my therefore what actually, is that what we see, and I know that you could say this too, Sherilyn, that those repairs, when they do happen, the relationship is richer than it ever was before. There was a sense of loss. And then the coming back together is like kintsugi, that Japanese pottery art, where the relationship is even more beautiful. It's stronger because you did lose something. And now you've only put together the pieces that you value, and the relationship is better. And then, as parents of these adult children, we actually cherish that relationship even more. And the children feel heard and validated. It's just better.
Yeah, it's actually can be healthier, right? Often this is a wake-up call to parents and to children that something in the system hasn't been working well. It has been unhealthy. And so I think that's my takeaway too, is to reframe this as not necessarily tragic, but an opportunity for a wake-up call and hope that, just as you said, the connection will actually be stronger and better because it will be healthier. And so that's what I'm leaving with today.
I love that. Thank you so much, Sherilyn. I love our conversations. This is so interesting and helpful to me. And so I really appreciate your insight and wisdom. And we appreciate you, our listeners. Thank you so much. Spread the word. We would love to have you share this with a friend.
We love it. And acknowledge again that this is in response to someone suggesting this topic. So we're so open to suggestions. We love talking about things that are on your mind. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.